Chinua Achebe ends the introduction to the trouble in Nigeria by saying we have lost the 20th century. Are we bent on seeing that our children ordinarily get to lose the 21st century? He shouted, God forbid. Recently, I saw a flyer on the internet advertising what I call it, a water trip or a canal ride or what in Makoko, and the description down there ordinarily speaks to how we ordinarily get to look at things and how we ordinarily get to perceive things and how we sometimes leave ourselves in delusions and deceive ourselves. The person was juxtaposing Makoko and Venice. It doesn't add up. There's no comparison between the two. Not about the people. The quality of life in the two places are completely different. You cannot rely on the pictures you see from drones and the captures that go down there and you want to say that is Makoko. Have you been to Makoko? It's in the center of excellence. It's right there in Lagos. It looks at everybody, but yet we tend to look the other way. We tend to deceive ourselves. Nollywood and different persons get to take shots far away from the sky and it looks as if it's all good, it's all fine. But the quality of life down there in the 21st century speaks of things ordinarily that shouldn't be in the 21st century. But we don't really want to look at them. We don't really want to pay the necessary attention. We don't even want to get a close-up look at ordinarily what happens in such a place as Makoko, because what happens there is not something that should be happening in the 21st century. How many schools are there in Makoko? How many hospitals? Where do they go to toilet? What are the sewage system they get to operate down there? How do they sleep? How do they eat? How do they dispose of their waste? How do they dispose the things they don't really need again? How do they travel? How do they communicate? How do they live life? Beyond the fact that many persons just want to give themselves this illusion that Makoko should be equated with Venice. If you've been to Venice and you've been to Makoko, you really come to see that there's no comparison with the two. I think I've been opportune to do. I've been to Makoko, and I also have the experience of Venice, and they're not equal. They're not together. They're of different kinds. They're on different levels. And can we just stop the joke? Can we just stop this idea that we think we can just do or say anything because we want to market ourselves cheaply? It is not the case. We have lots of work to do. We have lots of fixing to do. We have lots of things to ordinarily get to learn. And we are not there yet. And we don't accept this stuff. We allow oppressors get to control our minds. We allow them get to tell us. Just like Bantu Steve Biko would say, the greatest tool in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And they have controlled our minds to the extent we just think anything goes. But why will anything not go? Because you can only buy what you are sold. You can only buy the things available to you. You can only subscribe to the ideas around you. You can only subscribe to the realities you find yourself. You can only interact with the concept you have close to you or the consciousness you've been allowed to come to experience. And as we just allow things to just go to chance and without granting ourselves the scientific inquiries necessary or the cognitive reasoning we ordinarily need to do, we continue to have brain rot and we continue to just tell ourselves these lies and we tell ourselves this cheap stuff. We tell ourselves Nigeria is secure. We tell ourselves a place like Makoko is well to do. Whosoever came up with that particular idea is still, it's a genius. It's like the same person that came up with the idea of tribalism. It's not even a person, it's a thing we have come to allow ourselves accommodate for a very long time, from tribalism to sentiment. We've been abused by our politicians. We have been underserved by these people, and they tell us, things ordinarily should work hand in hand. Things ordinarily are not that bad. This is the same thing we get to see for those who come out to like talk about the exchange rate between the naira and the dollar, and compare the prices of things in the UK and compare the prices of things in Nigeria against the British pounds, against the Nigerian naira, and it doesn't make sense. The worlds are completely different. The worlds are not together. Stop thinking that because somebody who lives in Europe buys bread for 4 euros or 5 euros, it equates ordinarily your suffering in Nigeria. Ask yourself, what is 4 euro to the person in Europe? Not to you in Nigeria, because you are doing the exchange rate. To you in Nigeria, if 4 euro was 4 naira, what would 4 naira give you? What can you buy with that particular stuff in your country? These are the things politicians don't tell us. These are the things they allow us go. The same way we carry the narrative of Makoko is the same way we also carry this narrative. The narrative that ordinarily you can compare things side by side without looking at the history, without looking at the different perspective ordinarily we are supposed to look at while trying to talk about this stuff. Because tell me why on earth anybody at all, would come to the conclusion that because somebody buys bread for 4 euro in Europe, then it automatically means that Nigeria economy is not so bad, that the situation back home is not so deplorable. Because when you look at the cost of what you spend on transportation in Europe, when you look at what you spend on housing, let's even keep housing aside. When you look at the basic things you ordinarily get to spend on basic life needs and basic amenities in a month, you cannot ordinarily compare it with somebody who lives back home. So that when you sit down and you look at a thing such as the monthly spending somebody gets to do, as opposed to your reality and the part of the world you find yourself, you get to see that the equivalent, even at the moment, as a thing as if we should check something like $200 being spent by somebody in Europe, if you do the translation to naira, you get to see the equivalent, and you get to see how sad our tale currently is, because that person would have just spent probably, let's even assume the person is spending 400 to 500 on basic life amenities. I'm talking about a single guy now who just lives alone or something like that. 400 euros, 500 euros in a month. What would that be in naira? Now that you've gotten the figure in naira, what is the average salary of somebody in Nigeria who would ordinarily be able to get that kind of money and spend that kind of money in a month? Not the minimum wage that is still struggling. That's what they fail to tell you. Not the minimum wage. Not the level of insecurity back home. Not the level of corruption being peddled around. Not the situations we find ourselves. The realities are not the same. The similarities are completely different. They are not to be compared. They can be compared. They can be brought together. They are completely different. We should be looking at them from different perspectives, which are things we ordinarily are not doing. The events of our life, the events of the way we ordinarily should be going and the way we ordinarily shouldn't be going, are not things we at the moment are doing. Are not events we ordinarily are not really looking at. They are things more than what we ordinarily can look at. But we don't. We just pretend. We just do as though things generally are fine with us and life ordinarily goes well. It only takes somebody who has become disillusioned to come to start comparing currencies and start comparing things, and compare things as they go and compare things as they shouldn't go, because at the moment the economy is in shambles. The economy is like having its own problem. The economy is having its crisis, and the many events in our life that we don't really look at are things we ordinarily should be looking at, are concerns we ordinarily should be having, but we don't have such concerns. We don't think about these things we don't think about the things the way we ordinarily supposed to think about them. We just think about things the way we want to think about, and we think, it's all fine. Kemi speaks up and you shun her. Kemi wants to talk and express her own reality. The way she feels ordinarily she should do. You find people on the side of the oppressors who are equally oppressed are coming to defend the deplorable situations down there, and you ask yourself, at what point are we ordinarily going to get it right in a country such as ours? The people of Makoko, don't they have people who represent them in government? Don't they have those in different constituencies who ordinarily should take their case up to Abuja? We just sit down there and we tell ourselves it's a floating city. Makoko is a floating city. Are you deceiving yourself? There are beautiful lives down there that ordinarily should be doing things ordinarily they are not supposed to do at the moment. There are beautiful lives down there that we're supposed to be doing things other than the things they are at the moment doing. But no, it's not important. The concerns are not there. We shouldn't really even be thinking about them that way. They are all fine. We don't want to realize the fact that things at the moment are not the way they are in such a place because we have been very, very responsible. Is it just Makoko? What about the Niger Delta? What about the pollution down there? What about the influence of shale over the years? What about the fact that many persons have lost their lives and their lands to things that get to happen down there? What about the oil theft that continues to go on and leave those people in deplorable situations? What about these things? For how long are we going to tell ourselves, in and about this, we are all fine. In and about this, our lives at the moment are things we ordinarily can manage by ourselves for ourselves, and the way we ordinarily get to look at life as opposed to what ordinarily life was supposed to be. For how long are we going to tell ourselves that, you know what, we are all fine, we are all good, no problem. There's peace in our life. There's happiness in the way we ordinarily get to do things and the way we ordinarily get to see things, and in the way we at the moment have come to allow ourselves relate to life, allow ourselves relate to situations. Because like it or not, the economy of Europe and the economy of Nigeria, they're not the same things. The way money is being spent in Nigeria and the way money is being spent abroad are completely different things. The way people look at tourism and the security that comes with tourism and the comfort that comes with tourism in Europe is not the same way people look at tourism in Nigeria. The way people look at going to a thing like the Baltic Sea and the shores down there, it's not the same impression you get when you go to a place like Babich, or when you go to the beaches around Lagos, when you go to the beaches around Afikpo, when you visit the beach at a place like, I think it's Onweke. When you visit these places, they're not the same things you get to find. When you look at the shores of the Itu River, you don't really get the feel as you get the feel when you ordinarily go to some of these places. I'm not being Eurocentric here, I'm just being objectively realistic at the same time. I'm just being objectively true to myself and to the experiences I've had in two wars, and the experiences I've had probably in more wars than even two wars. And I'm just saying, we can continue telling ourselves that we are as these people, but we can only do that in comparison to them, as much as we don't want to own our own reality. Have you checked the security problems in Nigeria at the moment? Have you looked at the current crisis people are having in their life and the level of theft going on in different houses? Have you looked at the anxiousness in the faces of people in buses who ordinarily are thinking how they're going to provide for their children for Christmas, and how will the new year meet them? Have you looked at the deplorable situations we find ourselves in Nigeria, and how men of God and those who have made themselves gods, have ordinarily come to exploit such situation and explore them in different ways? Have you really looked at the many persons who are already clamoring and waiting and praying for the next year's 100 days of fasting and 120 days of fasting? So you're about to spend the first quarter of you're about to spend the first quarter of the new year in fasting and prayer and starving yourself, hungry for God to ordinarily answer your prayer. What type of God do you even serve? What type of God do you worship that you have to fast and you have to call down his name on every single human endeavor? You have to call brimstone, you have to shout him, you have to command him, you literally have to change his mind. You literally have to change his mind to ordinarily suit your situation. What type of God do you really worship? And what type of God pastors and our priests, our imams and our different clerics and our traditional religious leaders told us we ordinarily worship a God that will ordinarily allow you to suffer to that particular level before he comes to your rescue? I don't think so. We've just been sold a different idea of God. We've just been told what God is not. And what God is not is what Thomas Aquinas spent all of his life trying to really tell us, as opposed to what he really is. The arrogance from the Christian pulpit is so alarming. The level of suppression and oppression people get to face in mosques and in churches and in shrines, and the level of deception they get to meet in these places, and the level of confusion and ignorance presented to them as fact, sometimes leaves me in places I don't even want to start speaking of or talking about. Because why on earth will you think God's mind can be changed because you prayed? Why on earth do you think God can just change the weather because you ordinarily want to go to Europe, or you ordinarily want to take a flight, or your wife want to take a flight? Why do you think God ordinarily have to wait for you first to pray before he changes his mind? Have you really asked yourself these questions? Have you really explored this stuff? Because if you think in this particular light, if you think you have to force yourself on God all the time, you have to kabash, you have to, how do you guys do it again? Re, 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 ro, ko, ko, ko. You guys even practice this stuff. You practice speaking in tongue, you practice how to run tongues, and you read the script, you know how to go about the intensity, you know. You hear you have not started praying, you have to pray for 6, 8, 10 hours, 20 hours. What time do you have to walk? You see how irresponsible we become? We have always just sat down and always imagined that one day, just like Joseph Conrad's ship, maybe some sojourners from Europe would just sail down to Africa, probably not passing through River Congo, passing through different other places, maybe from Zambezi to the Niger, to the Benue River, to different places, you know, oranges, maybe Lipopo, just come down in our shores and bring goodies and bring good tidings for us and give us good things and present this type of stuff for us. It doesn't happen. It only happens in the movies, you know. It's only in the movies you see suffering and poverty being romanticized. In real life, it stings the devil. It robs the poor of such person of his or her dignity. It robs the poor of his or her dignity. It calls to question many things. It calls to question many things we ordinarily don't want to look at. It calls to question things we ordinarily don't even want to accept. It shows you the other side of life. It leaves you with almost no choice, almost no option. Poverty stings the devil, and nobody should romanticize poverty. Not for the people of Makoko, not for their current existence, not for their current life. The government ordinarily should look into that situation, should look into their situation, should look into the deplorable state upon which the people in the Niger Delta gets to live their life. Or you want to talk about a place like Akwa Ibom, forget Uyo, forget the capital. Have you been to the different local governments, and have you seen the difficulties in accessing roads in villages, and have you really looked at life down there? For how long are politicians going to be telling us that we just need to build roads and build roads and build? For how many years have we been building roads? Still the roads are not there. For how many years have we been talking about getting our trains back on their tracks? We've not seen anything. For how many years have we been talking about schools? Have we been talking about youth empowerment? Have we been talking about things like empowering women and all that? What have been the structural stuff we've really put in place with plans for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future? What are the things we've really done? What are the trees we've planted now into the future that we would never sit under their shade? Because we have the wisdom of knowing that the future ordinarily needs this, and the future cannot plant the shades they ordinarily need. Because the shades we are sitting upon, the shades we are sitting under at the moment, were planted by people before now. Whether the shades are good or bad, it's a contention on a whole different level. But at the moment, what are we really doing? Those who went to school free in Nigeria, what are they doing? What are they doing? When they rose to power and they took the rent, and they took the stage to ordinarily do what they were supposed to do. What did they do? Were they able to be visionary enough to sustain the free meal ticket they had when they were in school in the 70s and the 80s? Were they able to sustain unity schools, and were they able to sustain the building of universities and the building of schools and places of industry and places of vocational skills and learning that will see to it that what they experience be better. Were they able to do that? Nope. What have we heard about what have we heard about unity schools? Unity schools are expensive as you can imagine. I have a brother who attends a unity school at the moment, Federal Science College. But how many parents can ordinarily get to afford such a school? How many parents can afford sending their children to a school that ordinarily was supposed to be accessible to almost everybody? The numbers in the country are very few. And we sit down and we tell ourselves everything is fine. There are really lots of problems down there, but I think we ordinarily have to start telling ourselves the truth, and we ordinarily have to start doing that by ourselves. We ordinarily have to start looking at things from perspective we've not really paid keen attention to. And they span from things as little as observing that we don't have roads, that we don't have ambulances, that we don't have ambulance running the streets waiting for us to call them, that the police don't have a free toll number you can call and be sure that someone will pick from the other end. We don't have emergency numbers to dial when we are in crisis. We don't even have the luxury of the education to know that when there's problem, the first people to call are the medical guys or the police or security agencies to come to our rescue. We don't even have that. I want to talk about public toilets, or you want to talk about the different governmental institutions that build structures without public amenities like bathrooms to wash hands and clean our faces. Not even in Abuja. You go to a whole lot of federal government agencies, and you go to a whole lot of federal buildings, and you ask yourself, are we really serious? But it's not only us, you know. Even in Europe, it gets to happen. Dominic Taczynski normally makes fun of his parliament of the organization he belongs to as not being able to fix the water the heating system in the building, and you think that's in and about a justification for ordinarily your problem, but no, that was just another side. The events that happened back home rob Nigerians of their God-given dignity, rob them of their God-given talent. Look around. If you see electricity being supplied to you for 2 days straight, it looks as if it's a miracle. How long have you been alive? How long have you seen things really work? My problem is we support our oppressors, you know, we stay with them, we make excuses for them, we do things we ordinarily shouldn't be doing in the 21st century, and we think it's just easy, you know. Europe, it's just Europe. I listen to BBC4 almost every day, and you look at the debates that go down there and you ask yourself, wow. You look at the debates that go on the British Parliament and you tell yourself, okay, these are serious people talking for their people to a large extent, being patriotic and being nationalistic to a large extent, whether from the Conservative Party or from the Liberals or from the other parties that come in between these places. You get to look at the fact that they try to make sense of their existence. Whether they are making plans on the next place to get to exploit or the next country to get to really plunder them, whether they're looking at the next country they are going to plunder, it still goes to say that they pay keen attention to things like African studies, things like Oriental studies, things like European studies. You find these things predominantly in the West, and they do this for both good and bad intent. And you can argue all you want, but the fact is, they pay attention to details. You come to understand how they have come to understand the fact that things happen in life for those who plan, for those who are willing to risk making mistakes, and for those who are willing to look at solutions where solutions can be looked at. Not all the times heading towards the metaphysical, heading towards the heavens, calling on God for things we ordinarily can do with our hands. What then do you call that than being irresponsible? God must have been tired of us, you know. God must have been tired of our problems, because we bring too many things to Him that we ordinarily shouldn't bring to Him. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go to Him if you need consolation. I'm not saying you shouldn't go down there if that's what gives you joy. Or what I am saying is the fact that we have to be responsible also. We have to start making plans of planting trees into the future. If you look at Tinapa and you look at the infrastructure down there, it's a thing that can be replicated almost anywhere in Nigeria. There's nothing that proves and there's nothing that shows that life in Nigeria cannot be better if we ordinarily imagine and think things through. We mustn't build like Europeans build. We mustn't build like the Americans build. We mustn't build like the Asians build. But what we can learn is the science behind what we have forgotten, is the science behind how we ordinarily can improve in our life and in the ways we get to do that. Look at things, in the ways we get to look at things and do things. Look at the structures and how beautiful a place like look at how beautiful the structures the Ndembele people get to put up. Look at how beautiful they are. And look at how they can get better. Look at how they can be sustained. Look at how the science around that can be maintained and kept over the years. Look at how life can be for the people of Makoko. Look at how life can be for the people of the Niger Delta. Peaceful, happy, with all the benefits that come from having such resources around their corner. Look at how beautiful life can be for Nigerians, and ask yourself, from where to where in Nigeria, and for how long are we going to deceive ourselves and tell ourselves, all is well, all is good, all is fine, and there's peace in the world, and we just ordinarily should just ignore the naysayers and ignore those who ordinarily want to spoil the country's name and stuff like that. Look at how beautiful your life can be. Look at how cheap education can be for your children. Something that ordinarily supposed to be made available for everybody, but now is now so expensive. Look at how your life can be better and all the good things that can ordinarily happen that at the moment you don't get to meet and you don't get to see. And tell yourself, which way Nigeria? Which way Africa? What are the sanctions that needs to be lifted? What are the sanctions that we ordinarily should be employing philosophers and our legal team to ordinarily get to squash? What are the pacts we've signed with the West that have made them become the oppressors they currently are on many fronts, on many deals we get to make? What are the things we've done with them that ordinarily we shouldn't do with them, that we should go back and retrace? And what are the means upon which we can do that? Are we going to go through legal means? Are we going to go by revolution? Are we going to go by way of getting ourselves to be conscious to the level we should ordinarily be conscious? What should we be doing that we are not doing that we must do if we really want to make sense of existence down here? And how can we really position our life? These are questions we must ask ourselves. These are questions we must answer. Because if we don't do these things, we would just continue to lament and call on God all the time and make bad Christians as opposed to those who genuinely want to be religious people. Because the great chunk of people who fall down for most religious sentiment and get to change church, what are the bases they change church for? Now your pastor sabi pray. If he pray, God they hear him prayer. That your pastor, can he really pray? If he prays, does God change his mind and answers his prayer? That your pastor, does he perform miracles in his church? That your pastor, they perform miracles for in church? That your reverend father, the holy water when they bless, they better pass the one where the reverend father they bless? This is your religion. If they grant you connection to business, they grant you connection. That is your religion. Does it grant you access to connections to get contracts and stuff like that or not? These are on the basic levels what many persons do to demand from God a utilitarian kind of religious sentiment and affiliation as opposed to the real stuff we were supposed to do. God, you've made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. As the African saint and theologian Augustine of Hippo would say, because our hearts indeed are restless, we need to feel them. That is why we're having the crisis meaning we're having at the moment. How many persons ordinarily get to do things the way they were supposed to do them because they were supposed to do them the way they were supposed to do them as opposed to how they do them at the moment? And for us to have meaning, we have to first fix the basic stuff we are not fixing. What are the basic stuff we're not fixing? We're not fixing things as simple as electricity. You don't need to call on God to bring electricity down here. You don't need to call on God to provide you with transport. So that when you hear someone like Apostle Suleiman say his son entered from a toilet and appeared in another toilet, I ask myself, the countries, are they not all European countries? Don't they belong to the Schengen area? Do you even need a visa if you are living in the country legally to enter a bathroom and come out the other side? And how much is a ticket in Europe to travel between countries? How much will you spend traveling between European countries? Be it by train or be it by flight. How much will it take you for you to travel this way than for you to go disturb God and tell God, God tells you, or the Holy Spirit says, go to the toilet and you go to the toilet, go here and you go here, go here and you go here. And you find yourself in France from Germany, and you find yourself in Germany from France, and you find, like, come on. We make this thing look as though we are joking. We sell this hope to people, and many persons in the long run, like children, come to discover the lies and the deception they were given and the deceits they were told when they were children or when they were ignorant, rather. And now they are now conscious enough to tell themselves, you know what, I think this person was lying to me and I think I cannot take it anymore. And they lose hope and they lose faith, because what pastor goes about lying? What pastor goes about saying things they are not so sure of? What pastor goes about doing the things they get to do? What type of imam goes about telling the people the things they get to tell them about the other religion? Sad things. What type of religious leader do the things our religious leaders do, as opposed to the good stuff the good ones do? And for how long are we going to continue like this? Because the problem in a place like Makoko are human problems. There are problems of settlement, there are problems of adaptation, there are problems of ways of getting to live life, but there are also problems that come from things as basic as not getting the basic needs they can get in a day, and not getting the basic needs they can get, and them just believing anything they can believe, just like the drowning man who catches straws. Life goes on, life goes on, and as the saying goes, nobody really cares until you start caring for your stuff. As Bantu, Steve Biko would still remind us, the problem is not that the African is not aware of their problems. The problem is we've not been able to build our consciousness to the level we ordinarily can say we cannot take this anymore. We cannot take this anymore. Just like the proverb will get to say, woman where they find pikin no they wear pants sleep. Lady looking for the fruit of the womb or ways of getting pregnant, don't go to bed with her underwears until our attention gets to that level, till our situation gets to that level where we remind ourselves that the thing, like, no matter how nose big reach, if you perceive danger, mouth where they ask question, no they miss road. That is, someone who gets to ask questions along the way doesn't ordinarily get to miss their direction, until our situation gets to that particular level where we tell ourselves, Chino Achebe was right all along. We can resign ourselves to conversations about Nigeria's problem on small levels and become cynical and get to end there and embody a level of cynicism that will not do us any good and just keep life down there. Or we can grow, aspire for things better, aspire for ways to get to do things well and grow well, as opposed to the current situation we find ourselves in. And we might just die if we don't do the much needed stuff we're supposed to do. We might just crumble and kill ourselves and betray ourselves, if we've not already betrayed ourselves almost irretrievably so. Chinua Achebe ends the introduction to the trouble with Nigeria by saying we have lost the 20th century. Are we bent on seeing that our children ordinarily get to lose the 21st century? He shouted, God forbid. Because God forbid indeed, we cannot resign to talking about our national problems the same way Europe talks about the weather. The weather, you can do little or nothing to get to change it, save for scientific innovations here and there that get to bring changes here and there, but you cannot resign yourself to national talks in that particular direction. If you do so, we crumble together. And like Dike Chukwumerije would remind us in his poem, Fix the Politics, until we elect men and women in office with a heart for public service, men and women who don't look at tribe or tongue, just commitment to build a functional nation that fills us all with pride. Until we elect them in office, men and women with a heart for public service, men who don't look at region nor religion, who just look at the fact that we can grow together. Until we elect such men, the given things we labor in vain. Until we elect such men, we crumble together. We crumble together. I am Biringkpa bin Emeka, the mendicant. I am your brother. See you next time.